Welcome to Werezilla's Retrospective. I'm your host, Werezilla. With Godzilla vs. Kong still fresh in my mind at least, and two films that strongly influenced it having been spotlighted here on my channel, it's time to round off this unofficial GVK Influences trilogy with a look at one of the stronger entries in the Godzilla Heisei series with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Let us begin.
ま、せいぜい頑張ってもらいましょう。あんたもね。
Although given this is the fifth entry in the Godzilla Heisei series out of 7, not to mention there's the unrelated Showa series movie, the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, perhaps some additional context is needed. Two films previously, in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, technology from the future was used to turn Ghidorah into a cyborg, Mechagodzilla, which is as cool as that sounds. Granted, a trend started with this fight scene, but we'll cover that in a bit. This movie begins with Mechagodzilla's body being recovered after the battle.
We'll take it.
Which is then reverse engineered to first make a warship called the Garuda, and eventually the titular Mechagodzilla. Design-wise, yeah, I like it. It's appropriately futuristic looking given its origin, though that smooth texturing does make it look less intimidating compared to the original or Kiryu. And in traditional Mechagodzilla fashion, it's got a lot of firepower. The climax of the movie even has it combined with the Garuda to become Super Mechagodzilla. Makes it sound like it was a Megazord or something, doesn't it? That's an apt comparison, especially when you look at some of the early concepts for this version of the character. Apparently, at one point, it was going to be a Mechagodzilla Megazord, with multiple components combining together into one giant robot. You might even notice this concept art looks less like Mechagodzilla we see in this movie, and more like the one on the poster. And if the poster design looks familiar, then chances are you saw Ready Player One, as it was inspired directly by this artwork. This artwork is so popular, it was good enough to get its own action figure. If you want one, I don't blame you, but good luck paying for one. Before it faces off against Godzilla, however, we get a chance to have all 5 members of Toho's Big Five make an appearance in at least one Heisei-era movie, with the addition of Rodan.
Radon?
Oh right, this movie uses his original Japanese name in the English dub for some reason. I bet Rodan's inclusion in this movie was a real treat for one of our main human characters. This is Kazuma, designer of the Garuda, but his most standout character trait is his weird love of pteranodons. He's constantly talking about them. He even builds a drone that he can ride around on.
Oh my god!
Well, sort of. I think the movie wants us to think he's creepy due to his interactions with another one of our leads, Azusa, but that pteranodon fetish is so weird it makes you question if he's even capable of being attracted to anything that isn't a prehistoric bird. Of course, I should make the distinction while he's a pteranodon enthusiast, that does not make him a pteranodon expert.
Right, sir. Don't you know what they are, sir? They're small flying dinosaurs.
As for Azusa, she's a researcher studying an egg that her team initially believes is a pteranodon egg. Instead, what they get is... well, let me put it this way. You familiar with Grogu, also known as Baby Yoda? Of course you are, everybody is. Well, 27 years earlier, Toho gave us Baby Godzilla. Now, some of you may remember Minya from the older movies and feel weary about the inclusion of the son of Godzilla. Well, here's where I take you by surprise and reveal the bond between Azusa and Baby Godzilla is the emotional center of this film. Yes, really. It's nothing deep. We've had films question what to do with an infant giant monster before. Funny enough, many of those films were influenced by Godzilla. But here in this movie, it will tug at your heartstrings. Baby Godzilla manages to actually resemble Godzilla while managing to be cute at the same time, and that helps a lot. He's even popular with the kids, just like Grogu. Although keeping with how stoned Kong looked in our last video, Baby Godzilla looks pretty high himself. And believe me, it's hard not to think that with the way he walks, waddles his body around, the way he stares at Kazuma's Pteranodon drone, occasional bloodshot eyes, and multiple instances of having a case of the munchies. It also turns out he's got a second brain in his tail, which is a good segue into talking about the character Miki Saigusa, a rare example of a recurring character in the Godzilla franchise. Starting with Godzilla vs. Biollante, Miki has appeared in all of the Heisei-era films, her telepathic abilities being used to better understand the film's monsters. And sadly, her powers, as well as the psychic kids she works with, are usually more of a plot device than anything else. Miki herself is an okay character, as she feels empathy for Godzilla due to how different his mind is than anything she's used to. Of course, she also tends to get a backseat to other characters, and make no mistake, Asuza and Kazuma get more screen time than Miki. But she is more plot relevant this time around. That's always a nice thing to see. She's tasked with helping Mechagodzilla's pilots target Godzilla's second brain, and of course is hesitant to do it. I don't know what it says about her character arc, considering she is at least willing to go through with it. But on that subject, it is a bit of a shame that she isn't the one that bonds with baby Godzilla. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with Asuza, but Miki's the one who's going to interact with baby Godzilla in the next two films. Just feels like a lost opportunity. Either way, though, I can say that the human drama is more engaging than in a typical Godzilla movie this time around, which is good because the fight scenes between Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, and Rodan are... There exists a long-running criticism of the battle scenes in the Heisei movies, very little physical contact between the monsters, and more time spent firing beam attacks at each other. This really got started in the aforementioned Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, but in this movie is where it starts to get excessive. It's a shame, the effects themselves look pretty good. Godzilla and baby Godzilla have a surprising amount of facial movement, and of course the suits look great. Rodan is smaller than usual, portrayed as a wire-operated puppet instead of a man in a suit, but as a result, he can fly around in ways that would be unsafe for a suit actor, giving him much greater mobility. And unfortunately, it's overshadowed by a lot of laser effects. Although this movie does give us an unspoken justification as to why, which is more than can be said for the next movie, but that's not the topic of this video. This Mechagodzilla is a terrible close-range fighter. Every time Godzilla or Rodan close the distance, the tables immediately turn in their favor. As such, keeping at range and firing from a distance is probably a good idea. After all, Mechagodzilla does have a bad habit of losing his head. Something that actually happened while filming the final battle scene. In fact, while we're on the subject of the final battle, I'd like to call your attention to something very interesting. Like most Godzilla movies, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 got a manga adaptation, where Ghidorah's consciousness takes control of Mechagodzilla. This doesn't happen in the actual movie, but I think we can all think of another movie where that does happen. Oh, of course, I can't overlook this. What might be the most impactful part of the movie? The musical score. It's always great to hear classic Godzilla and Rodan themes, and as I said in my last video, Akira Ifukube's McKinney Kong theme is used here in this movie, altered to fit Mechagodzilla. But it's the tune we hear at the end of the movie involving Asuza and baby Godzilla parting ways, and baby leaving with Godzilla. This is easily the most powerful scene in the movie, and a lot of it is because of the music. It enhances all of baby Godzilla's scenes in ways that genuinely made me choke up a bit. When I went into this review, I had its similarities with Godzilla vs. Kong in mind, looking forward to seeing its similarities in their original context, and talking about that a lot. What I got was one of the best Godzilla movies, with baby Godzilla having the biggest impact on this video. And funny enough, Toho themselves found themselves in a similar situation thanks to this movie, as the filmmakers' intentions was for this to be the last Heisei movie, primarily so the first American Godzilla movie could be made. And of course that got delayed until 1998, and so they made 2 more Heisei films after this one. And then of course 1998 Godzilla was... not great, bringing Godzilla out of his early retirement for the Millennium series. Guess it goes to show you can never guess how things like this will turn out. Which makes this line hilarious.
One day, dinosaurs could make a comeback.
Just as a reminder, this movie came out in 1993, the same year as Jurassic Park. Asuza has no idea how right she was. Dinosaurs are everywhere. So naturally, the topic of my next review will have nothing to do with dinosaurs. But that doesn't mean they'll go unmentioned in my next video, because we're not quite finished with our Godzilla vs. Kong influences. My next video will be taking a look at a series of unmade Godzilla and King Kong films. If anything happens and these would-be films sound familiar, there's a very good reason why.
Right, sir. Don't you know what they are, sir? They're small flying dinosaurs.